Hi class, today I'm going to talk with you about cultism. Now, cults are something that you've probably seen displayed in movies of the horror genre or TV shows with things like candles and white dresses and creepy singing and kind of these spooky, sinister elements. And you probably have definitely heard of Charles Manson or the Kool-Aid that poisoned the masses, but did you know that cults still exist today? Cultism is defined as devotion to cult practices or religious zeal, and typically leaders glorify themselves to gain a small following to follow their ethical, political, or religious ideals. I have never been involved in a cult myself. However, I hope that none of you ever are. I saw the American Horror Story season Cult, which was kind of a political example with the past election of what a modern day cult would be. It sparked my interest to look into this further because I had always seen cults as just an American horror of the past. And so I watched a lot of documentary series on the Manson family, read books about cults, and gained some knowledge that I can share with you guys today. I'm going to start by talking about some of the most infamous cults in American history, beginning with the Manson family. Charles Manson had a kind of a traumatic childhood. It is likely that young Manson never met his actual father. His parents were divorced, they were both alcoholics, and he kind of was passed around from relative to relative and had an early life behind bars. While in prison, he became obsessed with the song Helter Skelter by the Beatles and aspired to commit a race war in society, start a race war. And so he was kind of a pimp for young women right after he got out of jail, and he convinced them to do these things to impress and honor him. He convinced them to help him commit these mass murders in order to obtain this race war. The next example is Jonestown. This was in 1978. It began with Jim Jones when he founded the People's Temple in the 1950s. He actually founded it in Indiana, then moved to California, and convinced all of his followers to go with him to the Guyanese jungle. This was in Guyana in South America, and he kind of convinced these people that there could be a utopian-like society. He promoted a sense of racial equality, and since there was such segregation, a lot of people hopped onto this idea. Julius Shears, author of 1,000 Lives, says that they actually couldn't grow food there because the jungle soils were too thin. So Jim Jones basically convinced these people it was an agricultural haven, it would be possible they could live there, and he was basically just lying to them the whole time, psychologically manipulated them. He murdered U.S. representatives that were there and even convinced all the followers to drink a laced punch in which they all died. It is said that prior to 9/11, this marked the single largest U.S. civilian life loss that wasn't a natural disaster. So there were lots of lives lost, and especially women and children. The last example from the past, Heaven's Gate. This was founded by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. They believed that they met in a past life, and they believed that God was an extraterrestrial called a Luciferian that stopped humans from spiritually developing. And so Marshall Applewhite kind of convinced these people to go along with this idea, kind of a religious, more mythical, obviously, idea. It shocked a lot of people. It was a crazy thing that there were so many people that followed this kind of wild out there idea. Author of Cults Inside Out, Rick Ross, actually says that held within Marshall's manufactured and seemingly mystical milieu, such became virtual prisoners, unable to readily break free due to emotional and psychological restraints. And so these people were so far into this cult, they feared a hell, a bad afterlife, and so they hopped onto this idea with Marshall, and they actually killed themselves upon the entrance of a comet into the atmosphere, hoping to gain to ascend to heaven with Marshall. And so it was definitely more of a weirder example, but definitely one of the most infamous cults in America's past. Some modern examples of cults I'm going to talk about are NXIVM. NXIVM is an organization founded in Albany, New York. This was supposed to be a self-help kind of executive success organization. However, it ended up just being basically a sex cult founded by Keith Raniere. He got actresses like Allison Mack and Kristen Krug from the CW and known for their roles in Smallville as well, to join this. It's said that from 1998 to 2018, over 60,000 people completed these courses and paid about $3,000 for just the first 5 days. Keith Raniere scammed people of their money. He traumatized these women and left them with a lawsuit. They lost a lot of effort and time that they could have been spending in other work environments because they thought that this was a good job opportunity, that they would be promoted within the company. However, he basically just psychologically seduced these women and convinced them that it would be good. They ended up being branded, actually, with Keith Raniere's initials. They were told that they were going to a business meeting, and they were told that they would be branded with the symbol of the company, and it ended up just being his initials. And so this led a lot of women to come out and speak about it because they did not want any other people to go through something like this. The next example is Scientology. This is founded by Ron Hubbard, and it is kind of seen as a business, but it's a wide network of churches. Actors like Tom Cruise and Leah Remini are both in the Church of Scientology. There are even documentary series about this. They get people to tell them their darkest secrets for this cleansing, to reach a higher level of spiritual ascension, to, reach your full potential. That's their beliefs. However, they use these secrets to kind of blackmail people. They bombard people to join this church, and then when they finally do join, they get them to sign a contract that lasts forever. They believe that your spirit lasts forever, so this contract lasts forever, and you cannot leave the church. And if you try to leave the church, they will use these secrets against you. They'll isolate people from their families, and a lot of people basically just end up, losing a lot of money and being kind of trapped in this church. It's definitely a huge one still going on today. The last thing is cult branding. You really wouldn't think that this is a cult, but it really is a main example of cultist activity now, with brands like Lululemon, Vans, and Nike. Especially for me, I wear a lot of Lululemon. It's kind of this promotion of a healthy lifestyle. A lot of women believe that if they wear this, they will eat healthier. They will go to these yoga classes that Lululemon puts on, and that a lot of people believe that if they do that, they'll be more active. And so Lululemon kind of markets this idea of how do you fit into the Lululemon manifesto? How can you be kind of a part of something bigger, a bigger brand? All these people wearing Lululemon are huge activists for it, and they kind of all stick together. And same thing with Nike. This is a sports brand. Obviously, team players who wear Nike, they have this just do it mentality, and they cannot be seen wearing Adidas, or they are in trouble, especially if they're sponsored by that. So a lot of people just stick to one or the other, Nike or Adidas, and kind of are like a, promoter of these products themselves. And so this is kind of a marketing technique that can be seen as cultist activity in modern days. The last thing I'm going to talk about is how these indicators have been seen throughout both past and modern day examples. The same three: psychological manipulation, physical violence, and obviously you need to seek help. A lot of people don't seek help, and so they get stuck into these cults and they can't get out. So obviously if these red flags come up, people need to seek help, talk to the police, people in the workplace, and avoid this kind of psychological manipulation that gets them entrapped in the first place. And obviously if there's physical violence that has occurred over the past years with cults, and this definitely needs to be avoided. And it's not as common today, but especially in past examples, this has been seen. So I hope that you guys learned a lot from me today about cults, and I hope that if you do ever get involved in a situation with these indicators, these red flags, you would be able to point them out and connect them to this harsh reality to avoid them.